Chair, I recognize a gentleman from Georgia, Dr. McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for being here with us today. That's awesome. One of the things that really worried us about the lessons learned we had overseas right now with the Operation Rough Rider and the deployment to the Yemen area. What kind of lessons, I'll probably do this with you, General, what kind of lessons did we learn with the Houthis and what we can do better with both measures and countermeasures, offensive and defensive coordination against those sort of terrorist organizations?
Well, we're certainly learning a lot in the CENTCOM AOR, and you mentioned the Houthis specifically. Between that and the salvo that that came from Iran, 18 months ago or almost 2 years ago now, we are learning a lot about how we need to address threats that might be low cost, high volume, and don't end up on the wrong side of the cost curve. And so even just most recently, we have developed capabilities that were lower cost that we are now putting on platforms over in the Middle East. So for example, whereas before we would have an F-15E with an AIM-9X on it, which is $400,000 a pop, to maybe an AMRAAM, which is over $1 million pop, shooting down the cheaper drones. Now we need to protect our assets, so we did what the situation required. However, we have more recently developed capabilities to where we can have laser-guided rockets, which are doing the same thing against those platforms. So instead of $400,000 or $1 million a pop, these things are $32,000 a shot, and you could put 42 shots on an aircraft. So it's showing that we have the ability to adapt our current force structure to meet those threats in the Middle East, that we aren't expending all the resources that we need to do to develop the capabilities, the high-end capabilities to meet the Chinese threat in the Indo-Pacific.
And do you think on countermeasures, as far as like the cheap drones they can send after us on our localities, we saw we had some U.S. troops actually killed not that long ago by drone strikes from terrorist organizations, and it was on our bases. What kind of hardened structures are we using, or even nets, anything cheap, whatever we can use? Are we looking at some things that are realistically going to be deployed against these things that are very difficult to go after mass-wise?
We are, and in fact, within CENTCOM, and I'm speaking for the Air Force bases. Of course, this was at Al-Assad, but in the Air Force bases, I was in one of the bases here over Christmas time, and they are using these stitching together the various counter-UAS systems. But rethinking, this is not only just the capabilities, it has to be the operational concepts on how to defend a base in a way we hadn't thought about, because they'd been uncontested for 25, 30 years. So now having a unit train ahead of time to know how to defend the base and go in and preserve that installation and the force generation that it provides is absolutely key. I think we're making some progress on that. It's not only the capabilities, it's the units that are trained to go over there and fight, but they're trained ahead of time as units. Those things are key.
Perfect. And Mr. Secretary, I know one of the things that we've talked about, AI predictability and maintenance, and we talked, the chair talked about our ability to stay up above 60%, about especially with aircraft. I'm a pilot, and I know that when you have a bunch of aircraft that are down because we didn't predict it appropriately, it puts us at a disadvantage. Some of the readiness rates are really, really poor, obviously. We're using AI predictive models to get on top of that.
We are. There's been a number of efforts to start doing that, and I think that's going to help. But I also think even over the years, because of budget pressures, we've squeezed that, and even though we knew we were squeezing it. So we really didn't take advanced predictive models to know that we were actually squeezing it. And that now we're trying to reverse that. We're trying to put more focus on readiness, trying to make sure that we have the parts and sustainment. And we had a little discussion earlier about right to repair, those sorts of things. So there's going to be a focus across the board, but some of the advanced analytics to help predict that are going to be important, as they are now, but they will continue to probably increase in importance.
Great. Now I always encourage the secretaries, just like the commandants and the leaders of each individual service, to be as transparent as possible about the stuff that you guys need. And you always need more, always need more. I remember when General Krulak was the only general out of the service commanders that really said, hey, we need more, we're suffering. And then when everything started falling apart, they're like, only one general told us we needed more. The chair has been very open and honest about the fact that we need more investment in our military. So just be very aggressive on that. We'll receive that well, I think. Final question. Now, this doesn't really apply to the Space Force because you guys are brand new, but we can see a lot of legacy systems that aren't benefiting all the services. The Marine Corps is trying to shed some of those things that we don't use for the next war, not the last war. And there is some protectionism in Congress, I think, on systems. And I think the last recent Futures Command analysis of the Air Force is like 30% of your assets really aren't futuristic. They're not thinking about the next war. They're thinking about the last war. Maybe they're protectionist from the standpoint of people have things produced in their districts. I would love to see you identify stuff. We can replant those things with the futuristic, cheaper, better stuff that we use in the future. I hope you'll work with us to identify those things that we don't need anymore. It's okay. Work with us in Congress. We'll help you collectively.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair, now I recognize the gentleman from